All right. Well, welcome to the latest episode of the Linking into Sales podcast. This is episode 44. And today I am joined by Kevin Thomas Tully of Sales for Life. He is based here in the U.S., in Baltimore. Unfortunately, Martin can't join us today. He's teaching a class, actually helping out some folks with learning how to use social media as well. But Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we connected over Social Selling Hour, I think, and then along with your Twitter chat, the SL for Life. Is that right?
S for L Social. Yeah, that's correct.
S for Social. Yeah. So, and matter of fact, if anybody's out there that wants to check out some very, very engaging Twitter chats, looking to have some good conversation with folks who are using social media to basically engage and connect with other folks. Check out doing these Twitter chats. They're all over the place, and the more and more you get engaged with them, actually, the more your cloud score goes up too. At least that's what I've noticed. So
yeah, that's a great outcome, and also in terms of building community and building relationships. And if you want to take the view that it's also very good for lead generation, of course, but Twitter chats are a wonderful, wonderful medium for meeting new people, and as you mentioned, Greg, raising your cloud score and lead generation, of course, which is kind of one of the reasons why we were in this business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely want more folks to kind of hear what we have to say and hopefully take some value away from it too, because of course we're all trying to provide value here in social across the board. So today I wanted to have a nice little chat with you about how using content for social selling as well as developing a routine for social selling. These are some issues that kind of come up among sales teams. I know marketing has been doing this for a while. Using content in order to generate leads and then developing routines around this by using a whole substantial bunch of tools, whether it's marketing automation or just social media management tools like Hootsuite and things like that. But having sales having an understanding of using content and developing these similar routines that actually address working with prospects and leads and contacts at the one-to-one level is pretty important, and it's a little bit different from a dynamic standpoint than marketing. So, I thought that having you come on and kind of discuss this, because with Sales for Life, you have a tremendous amount of information out there. I figured you'd probably be an expert in this space.
Well, thank you. And we like to think of ourselves as Sales for Life as experts, and we also like to think of ourselves also as people who like to help the community at large, especially when it comes to evangelizing social selling. And you hit on some really good points, Greg. Number one, salespeople these days, their role has changed. Where marketing and sales used to be in separate silos, marketing would produce content, sales pretty much would ignore that content because marketing would operate in their own silo, and they would get leads together and pass them on to sales. And oftentimes sales would say, wow, this lead really isn't very good because it's not qualified. And marketing would come back and say, well, this is a marketing qualified lead. And sales would say, well, it's not a sales qualified lead. Well, because of the way the buyer now interacts with salespeople, and statistics have shown that as much as 90% of the buyer's journey can be completed online without even talking to a salesperson, without even engaging with a salesperson. So today's buyer is out there looking for information, and they're looking for information online. So it's incumbent upon the salesperson to be that source of information. And you had mentioned value before, Greg, and it's very important that the salesperson provides value to the buyer at all stages of their buying journey. So how are they going to do that? They're going to do that with content. And whereas before marketing was the sole producer of that content, it's incumbent upon sales and the individual salesperson in today's environment to be a producer of that content in order to meet the needs of today's buyer.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that maybe for some salespeople out there, producing their own content might be a little scary, especially if they want to, get to the level of what marketing has been creating. Whether it's, if it's infographics or white papers or case studies or things like that, that might be kind of scary for some salespeople out there. So having I would think that having tools or even just a closer relationship with marketing for sales, so that way they can continue selling, and just provide that feedback back to marketing to help them with creating that content, getting it out there. I mean, it's a lot of there's a lot of change happening in sales. So I mean, I guess that goes into like how do we develop that routine with creating content, to put out there. What do you think?
Well, sure, I can go over what a good routine looks like. I've got a great infographic that I'd like to share with everybody, if I could, about what a good social selling routine looks like. If I could go ahead and find it here and grab it and put it on the screen.
Sure.
For everybody. Okay. Let's see. And I don't seem to have it right now, so of course we're going to have a small technical difficulty.
That's okay. When the when the audio version of this comes out, we'll shorten the length in this part.
Absolutely. This is something that's going to be edited out for future viewing. Okay, so let me see where I can grab it. And okay, so now I've got it, and we're going to share.
There we go.
And okay, so this is essentially what we'd like to teach at Sales for Life, which is how to build a social selling routine in 30 to 60 minutes per day. And essentially, it's a 12-step program. No, you don't have to be in recovery to use this program. You don't have to be a recovering social selling person who admits their first step is that you're powerless over social selling. But no, your first step, as you see here, Greg, is to find content to share. And I'll be talking about that in a second. And step 2 is to share that content to your social network. And these are the first 2 steps that I'm going to talk about today. And as you look through the 12 steps, you'll notice that the first 2 steps and the most essential steps are to find content to share and to share that content. So if those are the first 2 steps, if those are the most essential steps, it's just incumbent upon how are we going to do that. Okay, so first we're going to have to find out, we have to understand what's the difference between your content created versus curated. Okay. Difference between internal content and third-party content. And then the next way to do it is we're going to use content aggregators to feed your content on a regular basis. And then I'll talk a little bit about the strategy. Find 1 article a day and how we're going to employ that strategy. So first thing we're going to do, created content versus curated content. What's the difference? Well, created content is just that. It's content that you and I create on our own. It's things that are marketing rights, things that are written by our own teams, and things like a personal blog post that we might write and post to our own personal blog, or, if our organization permits, to our company blog. Now that differs from curated content, because curated content, it's not written by our own company, and it gets people to think differently about you, and it positions you as an impartial resource, as an impartial consultant to your buyer. Because what you need to do from a content perspective is you need to find content that's specific to each stage of the buying process. And you also have to have it ready to share at a moment's notice, because not every buyer needs the same piece of content at the same time. And again, because the difference between sales and marketing, that line is becoming blurred, you've got to act like a micro-marketer, and you got to answer these questions. Number 1, how are you going to help a very specific person with a very specific problem? And how are you going to find a very specific piece of content to help them with that problem? So there's a balance, Greg. There's a balance between the content that you create and the content that you're going to create from your team. Because the content you create yourself, that's going to help you with your conversion funnel. It's going to create an awareness for your products and services. But at the same time, if you're overexposed, if you're pushing out the same content by yourself or by your team, if you're beating your own drum, that's going to have a diminishing ROI. As an example. Oh, go ahead.
And I agree. I think that finding content to be able to take and send at the right moment to a specific contact, that's probably a very difficult thing for most salespeople to do, mainly because there's a limited number of tools out there to help them do that. I mean, there's some, but it's hit or miss. In full disclosure, I used to work for a startup that is actually helping users of Salesforce get access to the right content at the right time. And we were trying to solve the same problem, but from a Salesforce angle. But then again, the issues, some of the stuff that we were kind of, challenged with is, who's going to do all the work with curating the content to take and put it into sales' lap, basically. Is marketing all responsible for, or should sales have part of it, or who owns it? So that's big issues just between sales and marketing organizations on figuring out who actually owns all this stuff.
And it's really simple to solve, because as a salesperson, if you're on social media, you have access to an unlimited repository for third-party content, and that's Twitter. Twitter is one of the best tools for finding content sources. I mean, magazines, blogs, newspapers, ebooks, webinars, videos, they all make their way to Twitter. And it should be the first place that you start. I recommend downloading a Chrome extension for Twitter, the Clout extension, because you can create a Clout score on top of everyone's Twitter handle. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what Clout is, it's a measurement from 0 to 100 showing the balance of someone's social influence, how many channels they're talking on, how many people follow them, how influential and viral their content is, and it's a great gauge to identify the people you should be listening to. For example, if you were to look up social selling and dive into someone's account, you could retweet and favorite and capture all the articles about social selling if you did a keyword search. Same thing if you did, for example, CRM. Mm-hmm. So basically, you can go to Twitter and you can create Twitter lists. And the easiest thing to do for anyone who doesn't understand Twitter lists, there's two types. So public list allows others to see exactly what is that, any kind of list that you're creating. And there's a private list. Private lists are just that. Others can't see them. And the best practice for curating content is that you should create lists for your named accounts, your hot prospects, influencers, and clients. And then you can also do topic searches, whether you're going to search businesses you're in the Carolinas, right, Greg?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
You're in the Carolinas,
that's correct, yeah.
All right, so if you want to do businesses in the Carolinas or the top CEOs you want to follow, mm-hmm. So you can create these buckets of content that are easily accessible and that you can share at a moment's notice. And that's just on Twitter, just by keyword searches on Twitter. It's the world's largest repository of third-party content. I mean, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But once you create these curated lists based on just simple keyword searches, you have now at your fingertips these sources of content that you can now share to influence buyers along their buying journey.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point. Making Twitter lists. That's I've been added to a bunch, and one thing that's kind of nice about this that public lists, you get notified that you've been added to a public list, but a private list you don't get notified. So and you don't know how many private lists you could be on, and that's actually probably key for salespeople to be aware of, is that even if you don't have to follow everybody if you don't want to. But definitely following or adding them to a list is another way of following them without them knowing that you're following them. So, for some folks, if they're trying to maintain some sort of level of, anonymity or something like that with their prospects, so they're trying to monitor stuff that's going on before they actually make contact, that might be a good way to say, okay, now it's time to follow the person, and then start to try to engage with that particular prospect. One thing that you had mentioned with Clout and if you're using Google Chrome, which I was funny enough, I was going through the podcast stats, and there's still a lot of folks that are still using Internet Explorer. So I recommend anyone who's listening to this podcast through Internet Explorer, please switch to Chrome. But because there's a number of really, really cool tools, and I probably have a couple blog posts up on linkinintosales.com where you can learn about some really cool tools. But like Chrome has just become this amazing platform for developers to come up with some really cool tools to help with a number of things, including social selling. And seeing someone's clout score while you're on Twitter, if you see they got a 15 and got another prospect that's got a 50, then you know who you want to engage with because of the level of influence. Have you tried just out of curiosity, have you tried the Clout's new, well, they've had it out for a few months, but their mobile app?
I have not tried their mobile app,
Yeah.
But anytime I can do anything on my smartphone to save time, two things that I'd like to do. Number one, if I can automate and it doesn't make me look like a robot, I'm all over that. And number two, anything that I can do on my mobile device, especially that's going to save time, I'm all over that as well. So I'm going to have to make a note of that. If you say the Clout application for mobile is pretty seamless and it's a time saver, I will absolutely make a note of that and try that out.
Well, one of the
Thanks
things.
for letting me know about that.
Yeah, no problem. One of the things that I found with the Cloud app was that it actually will surface up content that you can share into Facebook or Twitter. Unfortunately, not LinkedIn. But it may be like they give you stats on for example, like maybe only 13% of your audience has actually seen this on Twitter, or this is a hot release, or this is a hidden gem, or some of the key terms that they're using to take and just say, hey, this content, people know you for this subject, so you may want to share this because it could continue to engage them. It doesn't get specific to the user, what content will engage a specific user, but it does help with actually helping you find content to share for that curation purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's important. Yeah, because curating content and finding a quick way to share it. If you are first to educate a buyer when they're ready to buy, oftentimes the statistics show that you are going to be more likely than not to get that deal. So being first is oftentimes as important as being right.
I agree.
So once you have this content repository built, Greg, one of the challenges is that there's far more content you have in a day than you have time to read. And also, I don't know about you, but I've got this latent fear that I'm missing out on something because there's just so much content out there that I just want to read it all, but that's impossible. So I can hire my little army of minions to go ahead and read it and just give me summary reports on it, but that just, when it gets down to it, the internet's just way too big.
Right.
It's too big for you, it's too big for me, it's too big for everybody. So you just drive yourself crazy trying to just capture everything. So fear of missing out be damned. Let's use a social aggregator.
That's
okay.
Right. Yep.
And my social aggregator of choice is Feedly. I don't know if you or your audience is familiar with Feedly. It's feedly.com. So any blog site, any RSS feed, any magazine or newspaper, anytime a blog's updated in real time, you'll have access to it in your reader. Feedly originated from the old Google Reader.
Yep.
And you can search content by URL, by title, by topic. You can set up categories, social selling, CRM, etc. And you can have this information to share it quickly with your community, and you can share it immediately. And it's so simple to use. If you see a blog you like, you can cut and paste, and you can add that to your aggregator. And the goal, again, is to build a repository of content. And it's easy to click when you read something. It's easy to share. And as you mentioned, Greg, the best part about it is that Feedly, as a social aggregator, it's mobile enabled. So you can wake up, you can hit the Today button on Feedly, and you can share the newest articles with your community in under 60 seconds. So think about that. Without leaving your bed, before you brush your teeth, before you got your morning coffee, because I know you're a workout guy, Greg, before you worked out, you did all your push-ups and sit-ups, and seeing how that six-pack's coming in, you can share content with your entire community. You can hit the buyer at every phase of his buying journey with everybody on your hot prospect list, with those clients you're trying to convert, before you even get out of bed. I mean, how powerful is that? I mean, that's why Feedly is my go-to social aggregator. Just think about that for a second.
It's extremely powerful. I think bed and be like, okay, schedule, done. I'm done for the day.
Yes.
And now I can just sit back and wait for some of the content to come in.
Yes, and the thing about Feedly is when you have it set up and you have it set up very tightly.
Maybe not some of that content, but maybe some of the prospects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm sorry. I think we have some latency issues here.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of delay.
Yeah, me too.
And we're back.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah. If you just want to recap, we can catch up.
All right.
I think we're on the same page now. If you can just repeat your last comment, that way we can catch up.
What are we doing, Kevin? Yeah.
I'm good. Are you? Okay. All right. Okay. No, I just wanted to point out that.
Right. Are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Are you back?
Oh, okay. I'm back. All right.
All right. Okay. All right. If you want to repeat your latest comment, and that way we can catch up.
Sure. What I was just saying, it's amazing that you can take and roll out of bed in the morning and take and share some content out there, and then wait for prospects to come in to possibly get added into your pipeline, that day, or even a little ways down the road. But it's also a way to help you continue building your brand and becoming someone who's somewhat recognized as potential influencer or thought leader in that particular industry that you're selling into, which is something that's kind of important for anyone in sales, whether they're using social selling or any other approach.
And that's one of the great things about content, Greg. Sharing content works all the time. Your content's always out there working for you, even while you're asleep. And you hit on some very good points about building your personal brand, about engaging with your buyers, because when you share content, and I'll talk about strategy in just a minute, but your buyers are looking at that content, they're becoming educated, they're becoming informed, and they are making decisions about you, about your company, and about how they're going to interact with you based upon the content that you share with them. And your content, even though you might not be actively sharing that right now, when you schedule it and your buyer sees it at that particular time, could be even when you're sleeping, it's working for you. And you create this little army of content soldiers that goes out into the world and finds your buyers, and your buyers find that and interact with you, and it's very, very powerful. And which leads me right into how I like to disseminate content. I use a strategy called 411. And even though I showed a graphic earlier about your daily social selling routine, as far as content strategy, this is going to become part of your weekly routine. Because out of every 6 articles that you're going to share, 4 of them are going to be curated content from a third party. It's going to be not written by your organization, but it's something that's going to help describe pain points, challenges, ideas, and insights that you've been talking about with your clients or potential clients by phone or in person. One piece of content is going to be in-house, something that's created by you or your team. It's something that's going to draw your clients to your own landing pages, to your webinars. It's going to help build your conversion funnel. If you do it anymore, as I said before, it's going to tune people out because third-party content shows you're unbiased, insightful. It shows you're a thought leader. It shows you're truly there to help. But let's not forget about your own content, because obviously you want to push people to your blog, your website, your gated content, your conversion funnel, or otherwise, why are we here? And then finally, one piece of content, it's going to be like a personal message to humanize your brand. And this is really great for Twitter. I personally, I don't do this as much on LinkedIn. It's other pieces I'll do on sales leadership, or even what I'm doing this weekend. But that's really great for Twitter because, Greg, can't say it enough. People buy from people, and they buy from people they like. So if you show you're not a robot, if you got a little bit of a personality, if you're fun when you engage with people, and I think that's how we met. We engaged on SS Hour and our chat on Wednesdays, S4L Social. That's why we're talking today, because you knew I wasn't a robot, and I knew you weren't a robot, and we had a conversation. And the one thing I always say is conversation is the ultimate piece of content. Anytime you can get in a conversation with somebody, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. The purpose of social. I wrote an article about this in early July. I've said that social selling is about opening, not closing, and it's using content to help and open up that conversation, and hopefully open new business as opposed to close. That could be pretty powerful, for a lot of folks that are out there using content to hopefully help them start new relationships, and that's really, I think, what socials has been helping with tremendously over the last few years.
Yeah, you hit the magic word that I always reminded. I've never saw it because I'm it's way too young for that. But Groucho Marx, you say the secret word, something comes down. But something my father taught me a long time ago. It's relationships. That's the key word to everything. The most important business skill is the ability to build integrity-based relationships. If you can build that relationship with your buyer, with your prospect, with your coworker, with your manager, with the people at marketing who are doing their best to provide some good content, that is going to make all the difference in the world. And if you look to build a relationship first, everything is going to flow from that, and everything is going to follow. And that's what I try to do, and that's how I try to conduct my business. And I think it's worked out pretty well. And if you can just follow that, that's kind of the golden rule of social selling. Build the relationship first, and everything will follow from there. And when you're sharing content, you're looking to build that relationship. You're positioning yourself as someone who's a resource, who provides value, and is looking to help. And that's the relationship you're trying to build. You're not going out there and you're hard selling. Hey, I helped you out. Here's a piece of content. Okay, now you got to buy from me. You're not that kind of guy, Don't be that guy.
No, definitely don't be that guy. There's a great comedy skit done by Brian Regan called it's called The Dinner Party. You can go out and find it on YouTube. But basically, he talks about how watch out for the me monster at the dinner party, and he goes into basically. Don't go into a wisdom tooth story with a two wisdom tooth story, because someone's going to have a 4 wisdom tooth story. They're going to one up you and all the way through. Hilarious skit. I strongly recommend folks go out and watch it, because if you've ever been out to a networking event or a dinner party or something like that, this is there's definitely been at least 1 or 2 at some of the events that I've done here in the Triangle that they don't know any better. So, but as you kind of say some of this. The importance of building relationships. We know this is critically important in sales. Otherwise, people don't come back to buy again. In my role, where I am, I'm concerned about folks actually becoming repeat buyers and doing the cross-sell and the upsell as well from a marketing standpoint. But it just sounds so much like just having really good professional networking skills is really what's key for most social salespeople. What do you think?
I think you're exactly right, Greg. And it's funny because I believe that for people like you and me, it comes very natural. And I could be wrong, but I think that when you walk into a networking event, and you probably caught me rolling my eyes when you were telling this story, the way I probably would win money if I placed a bet and said the way that you approach a networking event, the way I approach a networking event are eerily similar. You're probably going in there not to find out about what you can do for somebody, but how you can help somebody. And that is the same way you should approach social selling, because you already know what your product is, and you already know what it can do for somebody else, but you don't know enough about the other person. The other person hasn't really given you permission to try to sell your product. You have to find out about what their needs are. It always goes back to what's the need behind the need, and you don't know where they are on their buying journey, and you don't know exactly what their situation is. So you have to find out what their story is. You have to find out how you can help them, and you have to always position yourself as a resource. And if you position yourself as a resource, and social selling is not a one-off thing, and it's not a short term commitment. It can be a long-term sales process, depending upon what your industry is and what your product is. But think about relationships, okay? Did you propose marriage on the first date? I didn't.
No.
I don't know how many people do. I mean, I believe in love at first sight. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big believer in love at first sight. But that doesn't mean that you go ahead and propose marriage on the first date. It's the same thing with social selling. Don't propose marriage on the first date, because people might think you're a little crazy, and you get scared away at what might have been a good prospect, the love of your life. But it's the same thing at the networking events. You don't want to go out there and just show up and throw up, as they say. Just listen. You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's the old sales adage.
It's amazing. A lot of the old stuff that that maybe our parents or grandparents actually taught us still exists today. So still very much apply when relationship building. So
absolutely.
I teach my kids the 2 ear, one mouth a lot. So
I do. I know it's tough, especially when you have kids. You just want to stick the cotton in the 2 ears and tell them to keep this one mouth quiet. Oh.
Yeah, some days you wish you didn't have the ears. Yes, you didn't.
Exactly.
So anyway, we're coming up here on the end of our time together here. But do me a favor and tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Sales for Life, and what can folks kind of expect from what you guys have going on there.
Okay, great, sure. I'll tell you exactly what we're going on. We are right now heavily invested in predictive analytics, and one of the things that I am really championing for our company is the way in which we are going to use predictive analytics to define who our customer is and who is going to buy from us. And as an example, if you're doing forecasting, for example, versus predictive modeling or predictive analytics, forecasting will tell you the number of, let's just say, ice cream cones that you're going to sell in a particular region. But predictive modeling is going to tell you who exactly is going to buy those ice cream cones. So wouldn't you rather know the person who's going to buy that ice cream cone is male or female between the ages of 18 and 23 with an income of, I'm doing B2C stuff right here for just off the top of my head, mm-hmm. with an annual income of less than $54,000 per year, who also will purchase at the same time chocolate syrup, and in the past has bought People magazine, for example. I'm just looking at just silly predictors right now, just doing things off the top of my head. But we have honed in on our process certain number of predictors that show who our ideal client is, what causes them to buy, what stage in the sales process, what content have they interacted with that will cause them to buy. And it's really exciting because no longer are we forecasting, which is guessing. We have it now honed down to exactly who is going to buy from us and when, which allows our entire sales team to go after a specific client and a specific stage, and we have moved up our conversion rate to over 90% because of this predictive modeling.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, and I think the predictive approach is, I guess it's extremely helpful for helping salespeople figure out exactly who to target, and that almost sounds like that eliminates the need for cold calling.
Well, listen, I grew up on cold calling. I mean, I don't know how big of an office you're sitting in right now, but the room I'm sitting in right now, if you cut it down the middle, and you just pull out the yellow pages, get a black phone, get another black phone. Only thing was missing was a rotary dial, and put myself and my other partner ahead of us, and get the whiteboard where we can put down the marks on there of not successful calls, because there were kind of few in the beginning, but how many times we got yelled at, how many times we got hung up on, and of course the big time when you win extra bonus points is when somebody used profanity and before they hung up on you and yelled at you. But no, that's how I grew up. You know, I'm gonna say in the mid '90s because that's when it was. When myself and my partner owned our first company, which is a mortgage company, sold mortgages over the phone, which was my introduction to hardcore telesales. Yes, I was the person who interrupted your dinner when you didn't want to hear it, but you know, we built that company up pretty nicely over that. Cold calling, why you want to avoid it, there's going to be no substitute for the phone. Phone's never going to go away. When I want an answer quickly, when I want to hear in a client's voice what is exactly going on, email that you can't get tone, you can't get context. There's no substitute for the phone. So phone's never going to go away. Cold calling, not so much. There's better ways. Social, of course, is much better than the phone, but in terms of making contacts. You can get through somebody on LinkedIn far more quickly with no gatekeepers than you can on the phone. But as far as getting an answer and hearing it in someone's voice, you know, when I want to take the next step, excuse me, Greg, I go to the phone. I go from online to offline. I go to the phone.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing more and more sales teams also, you know, taking that approach, is using social to kind of warm it up before they actually go out and make the phone call, or maybe they've set an appointment over social or something along those lines. But I mean, then, you know, that's not a cold call. That's a warm lead almost. So
right.
But that's good. That's good. So what else can they find on salesforlife.com?
Salesforlife.com. We have a number of white papers. We have essentially, Greg, we have the whole store. We believe in we're very transparent. White papers, ebooks, infographics, that routine that I showed before. If you want to know anything about our process, we are also launching after Labor Day, LearnSocialSelling.com, which is going to be our public enrollment portal, where anyone who wants to take our social selling training can just get on there, and one click, and you can sign up for any of our social selling trainings anytime you want. We like to think of ourselves as the Wikipedia for social selling, because we crowdsource all of our content and we make it available to anyone anytime they want to see it. Essentially, we show everything. We don't hold anything back. If you want to learn about any one of our topics, it's on our blog, salesforlife.com/blog. It's categorized by sales process. LinkedIn, there's a category there for our Twitter chats, SRL social, marketing, sales. There's a whole category for sales resource on our blog. It's the A to Z for social selling. If you want content that you want to share, I don't think you should go anywhere else. You can go to salesforlife.com, and that should be enough content for you to share to any buyer at the buying journey. There's things about what the ROI of social selling is, how you can sell social selling to your team. We're blessed that we have a lot of good content creators, as well as good sales members on our team that are very well respected thought leaders in the space.
All right, very good. Well, perfect. So I had a little pause there. Sorry if I put a little silence there. Apparently, the internet's got some latency issues today.
Sure.
But I think that's awesome. You know, I think obviously linking into sales. You know, we have some, mainly the podcast, but we are trying to produce some additional content. But so I don't want folks to get kind of confused, like, well, why is somebody from Sales for Life on the podcast? Listen, anyone who's listening to the podcast, you know that Martin and I want to bring tremendous value to this particular podcast, and so having Life I know they're a reputable organization, so you definitely go out there and check it out, especially if you want to learn more about social selling and some of the stuff that they have to offer too. Well, I think that pretty much concludes our podcast for today. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us today. And I hope that I'm sure actually we'll probably see each other in about an hour on the next. Right?
Yeah. Yes. As this is going live, we will probably be on SS Hour in about an hour, and on Wednesdays, I'm sure you'll be joining me on S4L Social on Wednesdays at noon. And it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, Greg. And you folks at Link for Sales do a tremendous job as well. I can't say enough good things about you, and especially this podcast, video podcast, has been a tremendous experience. And anyone who wants to know more about Sales for Life can always log on to www.salesforlife.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin T. Tully. That's KEVIN TTULLY.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you very much for everybody for joining us for the Linking into Sales podcast. If you have any questions or comments or want to suggest a guest, please reach out to us on Twitter at Linking in the number 2 Sales. To come in and join our LinkedIn group on LinkedIn, just search for Linking into Sales. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You have a choice of iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and TuneIn. Those are our platforms. You can also listen on the website at linkingintosales.com. Don't forget to add us to your Google Plus circle. Oh my gosh, we're like everywhere. But anyways, you guys have a great day, and we'll catch you next week with another great interview. You've been watching Linking into Sales, using social media to support the sales cycle.